It was not until the evening was fairly far advanced that the opportunity of speaking to Dollops alone was afforded Cleek. He took it when the Pig and Whistle was filled to overflowing, and hardly a man who worked at the factory was not inside it or standing outside near the little quay, holding the usual evening's confab on the affairs of the day. Cleek caught hold of Dollops as he was making his way into the little bar. "Come fair a turn up the road, matey," he said loudly. "It's a fine evenin' what makes your 'omesick fair a sight you ef your own fireside. Ave another drink later, Meb. Come on." Dollops linked arms with him, and, smoking and talking, the two men went off up the dark lane which led from the quayside, and of a nighttime was as black as a pocket. Cleek's torch showed them the pathway, and as they walked they talked in rapid whispers. "Now, lad, let's hear all you've got to say," he rapped out at length, as the distance grew between themselves and the crowded little pub, and they were safely out of earshot. Dollops gulped with pent-up excitement. "Lor! Sir, there's some mink wrong, anyhow, I've discovered that much," he broke out enthusiastically. "Chummed up with old Black Whiskers I did, and promised him an internight at 12 o'clock ter do some loadin' onter the fishin' boats what's on their way ter Belgium. You're a nice seaman sorter, lad," he told me after we'd been chattin' fair 10 minutes or so. "Want ter make a bit of extra money by 'oldin' of your tongue?" I was on it like a knife. "R.A. thur. ISCS. Or all right, CSE, come along to the quayside ternight at 12 o'clock. There's a bit UF loadin' up ter be done, and only a few UV the men are required. I don't choose none what I don't cotton to. You'll cotton ter me all right, matey, ISES, with a sort UV alarf that seemed ter tickle him. I'm as close as the devil himself. Any think yer doesn't want me ter see, just tip me the wink. I will that, SESE, and then went off. And so 'ere I am, sir, fixed up for a busy evenin' along UV old Black Whiskers. And if I don't learn some mink this night, well, my name ain't Dollops." "Good lad," said Cleek, giving the boy's arm a squeeze. "That's the way to do it. And is that all you've got to tell me?" "I've done a bit myself, and chummed up with a chap called Jenkins, the tall, thin man who works on the left of me, and he's let me into the secret of the fishing boat business. But he's a close-mouthed devil. Either doesn't know anything, or won't tell. I'm not quite sure which. But he wasted a good deal of valuable breath endeavoring to teach me to keep my mouth shut. God! I give something to have a few moments alone with your friend Black Whiskers. There's a ripped pillowcase in my portmanteau which ought to interest him. And what else did you learn, Dollops?" "Only that what they ships is electric to beans ter perfect flexible electric wirin's what is used for installations, sir," returned Dollops. "That's what most of the things were what I set eyes on after workin' hours, stacked up all ready ter be loaded on ter the boats. Long, thin things they were, and ought ter be easy work, judgin' from their contents. But why they make all this mystery about it fair beats me." "And me into the bargain, Dollops," interposed Cleek, with a little sigh. "But there's an old saying, that there's no smoke without fire, and ordinary people don't make such a devilish fuss about others knowing their business if they're on the straight. What all this has got to do with the frozen flame business I must confess somewhat puzzles me to discover. But that it has something to do with it is proved by that fishy character Borkins, and the amiable attempt of his friend to murder so humble a person as myself. Now it's up to me to find the missing link in the chain. Hello? Here's a gap in the hedge here. Looks like it had been made on purpose. Let's go and investigate." He whipped his little torch round, and the circle of light flashing over the ground revealed to their searching eyes something vastly unexpected in such a place, and yet which, after all, seemed to fit into a place where so much mystery and secretiveness was in the air. They themselves, disguised as such rough characters, fitted into the strange picture, which struck Cleek, even in spite of his many peculiar cases, as very much out of the ordinary. A gap in the hedge there was, right enough. And through the gap, someone must have been working here a very short time before a square of turf, cut carefully out and laid upon one side, revealed to their astonished eyes a wooden trapdoor, exactly suggestive of the pirate's den of a child's imagination, and with a huge iron ring fastened to the center of it. Cleek whistled inaudibly, and turning round upon Dollops, a happy light in his eyes and a smile, almost of amusement, on his lips. "Gad," he exclaimed softly. "Game to try this, Dollops? I am going to have a shot at it myself." "But you ain't got no firearms on yer, sir, in case o' accidents," returned the literal-minded Dollops, "and no man in 'is senses would attempt to go down that thing without 'em." "Well, I've been called a lunatic before this, lad. And going down it I am, this minute. And if you've the least qualms at following me, you can just watch up here and warn me with the old signal if you hear anyone coming. But I'm going down, to find out where this thing leads to, and $1 to a ducat it'll lead to a good deal that means the unraveling of a riddle. The fellow who tangled the threads in the first place has a head anyone might admire. But what I want to know is what he's taking all this trouble for. Coming, Dollops?" Dollops sent a reproachful look into Cleek's face and sniffed audibly. "Of course I'm comin', guv'nor," he made answer. "D'yer think I'd be such a dirty blighter as to let you go down there p'raps to your very death alone? Not me, sir. Dollops is a follerin' wherever you lead, and if you chooses 'ell itself, well, 'e's ready ter be roasted and fried in the devil's saucepan, so long as 'e keeps your company." Without waiting for the end of this gallant, if rather prolonged speech, Cleek knelt down, set his 2 hands upon the iron ring and pulled for all he was worth. But the ease with which the door lifted came as something of a surprise. It came up silently, almost sending Cleek over backward, as indeed it would have done a man with less poise, but he easily recovered himself. He and Dollops cautiously approached the edge, and in the half-light which the moon shed upon it, they did not use Cleek's torch, saw that a flight of roughly made clay steps led down into darkness below. They sat back upon their heels and listened. Not a sound. "Coming," whispered Cleek in a low, tense whisper. "Yes, sir." Dollops was beside him in an instant. Cleek took the first step carefully, and very slowly descended into the darkness, with Dollops close behind him. Down and down they went, and on reaching the bottom, found the place opened out into a sort of roughly made tunnel, just as high as a man's head, which ran on straight into the darkness in front of them. "God! Gives you the fair creeps, don't it?" muttered Dollops as they stood in the gloom and tried to take their bearings. "What you're goin' ter do, sir?" "Find out where it leads to if there's time," whispered Cleek rapidly. "We've got to find out what these human moles are burrowing in the earth like this for. I'd give a good deal to know. Hear anything?" "Not a blinkin' sound, sir." "All right. We'll try the torch, and if anyone turns up we'll have to run for it. Now." He touched the electric button, and a blob of light danced out upon the rough clay floor, revealing as it swung in Cleek's swift fingers the whole circumference of the place from ground to ceiling. "Cleverly made," muttered that gentleman in an admiring whisper. "It reminds me of the old twisted arm days, Dollops, and the tunnels that ran to the sewers. Remember?" "I should just jolly well think I do, guv'nor. Them were days, if you're like it. Never knew next minute if you were goin' ter see daylight again." "And this little adventure of ours seems a fair imitation of them," returned Cleek, with a noiseless laugh. "Let's move a bit farther on and get our bearings. Hello? Here's a little sort of cupboard without a door. And, look at those sacks standing there against that other side in that little cut-out place, Dollops. Now I wonder what the devil they contain. Talk about the catacombs. They aren't in it with this affair." Dollops crept up noiselessly and laid a hand upon one of the great sacks that stood one upon the other in 3 double rows, and tried to feel the contents with his fingers. It gave an absolutely unyielding surface, as though it might be stuffed with concrete. "Hard as a ship's biscuit, sir," he ejaculated. "Now I wonder what the dickens—" His voice trailed off suddenly, and he stood a moment absolutely still, every nerve in his slim young body taut as wire, every muscle rigid. For along the passage, not so very far in front of them, from where it seemed to terminate, came the thud of men's feet upon the soft clayey ground. The torch went out in an instant. In another, Cleek had caught Dollops's arm and drawn him into the narrow aperture, where, with faces to the wall, they stood tense and rigid, listening while the steps came nearer and nearer. They waited in the darkness, as men in the Bonnet Rouge days must have waited for the stroke of Madame Guillotine. The footsteps came forward leisurely. The intruders could hear the sound of muffled voices. One, brief, concise, clipping its words short, and with a note of cool authority in the low tones; the other, Dollops huddled his shoulders closer and contrived to whisper Black Whiskers before the two men came abreast of them. Strange to be walking thus comfortably in the dark. Either they were sure of their way that it didn't matter about having a light, or else they were afraid to use a torch. "You will see that it is done, Dobbs, and done properly tonight," sounded the brisk tones of Black Whiskers' companion. And then the reply, "Yes, it'll be done all right. We're sending him off at 1 o'clock sharp. Loadin' at 12. No need to worry about that, sir." And these two newcomers? You can vouch for their reliability to keep their mouths shut, Dobbs? We wouldn't have chanced taking them on if we hadn't been so short-handed, but you're sure of them, eh? They could hear Dirty Jim's ugly little chuckle. It seemed laden with sinister purpose. "They're sound enough, master, I promise yer," he made reply. "Ugliest lookin' pair o' cutthroats yer ever laid your peepers on. Seen dirtier business than this, I dare swear. And Pigot's on to the right kind, all right. Good man, Pigot." The two came opposite them, and stopped a moment, as though they might be wishing to investigate the contents of the sacks that stood nearby, hidden by the enveloping darkness. The tension under which Cleek and the youthful Dollops labored was tremendous. Not daring to breathe, they stood there hugging the wall, their every muscle aching with the strain, and then the two strangers walked on again, still talking in low, casual voices, until they had reached the end of the passage where the steps started abruptly upward. Then a patch of light showed suddenly. "Steps here, be careful. They're none too easy," came the cautious voice of Black Whiskers. "I'll go up first, so's you kin follow in my steps." "What's this? The door been left open, eh?" "I'll have a few words with that chap Jenkins afore I'm many days older. I'll larn him to disobey his orders. Anyone might come along air and drop in casual like. The unreliable swine." The light grew less and less as the bearer of it climbed the rude stairs, and finally vanished altogether. And as it disappeared, Dollops clutched Cleek's arm, his breath coming in little gasps. "The door, sir," he gasped. "If they close that, we're in." Even as he spoke there came a sound of sliding bolts and a thump which told the truth only too well. "Did you hear, sir?" he almost moaned. The trap door had been closed.